Well, welcome everybody. I am very grateful that you came. Can everyone see the screen? Yes. Okay, so really grateful as people come in. We have so much to cover that we want to be really disciplined with our time. So thank you for being here on time. For those that don't know, I'm Wade, and this is my lovely wife, Debbie. Hello. We are going to be celebrating our 24th year of marriage in December. Wow. So it's one of those odd times you don't really quite when and what, 24, was it matter? But anyway, we love marriage, and that's the point. So to get to 25, you got to go through 24, and to get to 23, you got to, etc. So, love marriage and grateful that you're here. Okay. So, what we intend to do is, in the scope of this class, is recalibrate your marriage conversation. Conversation about your communication. That the lifeblood of any relationship really is communication. And for most of us, we are living in this realm where, in reality, our communication isn't terrible, but it's likely not what we expected or hoped for. And over the course of your relationship, it can kind of go up and down, and you've been to marriage retreats and discipling, then had a fight, and it's been up and down, but you might be at a point where you're just stuck. You're just disappointed. And it's not meeting expectations, it's not terrible, and I have to call a divorce attorney, but how do we go from here to, the opposite of disappointment? Appointment. We're happy about it. That's what our goal is in this class. The goal of every marriage retreat, marriage therapy times is to get at the friendship that's at the heart of your relationship. You got married for more reasons, I assume, than just a great tax break and you had a partner to share, chores around the house. Fundamentally, you really like the person you married. That's our assumption. Even if you're not feeling it, that is a truth. And that's what a lot of marriages are stuck in, is that you actually do love the person because you married them, but we have patterns of behavior or conversation or challenges that make me feel like we're not friends. We're business partners, and so I want to remind all of you that you really do have a friendship. So if you could turn to your spouse and say, "Thank you for marrying me."
Well, I just wanted to say a quick thank you and welcome to our class as well. It's great to see so many of you guys. And just so you know, the definition of recalibrate, I wanted to give this to you. It's to determine, to check, or to rectify an instrument of measurement. So another definition of recalibrating is to ascertain the caliber. So some of you guys might be here today because you need to recheck how we're doing on the conversation. So maybe check the caliber. Maybe your caliber is going great. Our conversations are awesome. We're spending great time together. Some of you may be feeling like, man, I don't even know how to talk to my spouse anymore. I can't get him to talk to me. And that's what we're going to talk about today, so I'm excited about it.
Psalm 133:1. How good and pleasant it is when God's people live together in unity. Many of us have read that initially in the NIV, and it said how good and pleasant it is when brothers live together in unity. And that was our brother's household main theme, right? That was when the brothers were getting together and have a fight, that's what you turn to. In fact, it's not just that God wants the brothers to live together in unity.
Yes.
He wants all of us to live together. And in that brother's household where there should have been unity, and it's pleasant in your household. This is God's heart, and it's what you want.
Right.
And I want you to know it's what your spouse wants.
Yes.
I think sometimes we forget and don't give the benefit of the doubt that my spouse does want to live in a good marriage, in a great marriage, and have peace in our home. And so why wouldn't she just... How good and pleasant it is when we live together in unity. I want to show a little video that I hope will set a context of the rest of our time.
Isn't that a sweet picture? I love this video because it shows so many old, not really old, I mean, it looks old. I know to us we think they're young, but it shows old people falling in love, being in love with one another. I know all of us want to grow in our relationships. And it talked about the book of love, and I really believe that the Bible is what they're talking about when they talk about the book of love. And as long as we're trying to base our lives and base our relationships on the Bible and the book of love, we're already ahead of the game. And we're on our way to being that old couple in love with one another. And I think about, you know, the movie Up, you know, the little old couple in Up, and just how great what great friends they were. And this video kind of reminds me of that too, just being great friends and growing closer and closer with every year.
That's right. We wanted those rings, and we got them. Amen. The stuff we're going to share with you is written a lot of from these two people. This is unimportant to you, but in the fact that what we're going to present to you is not just our opinions or experience. There's real science and a lot of hard evidence behind it. This guy's name is John Gottman. That's his wife. And he became a marriage and family therapist in 1969. He started seeing individual clients, and almost all of them ended up in divorce. So then he decided, man, I am not really good at this. I'm going to go get with people who are good at this. And so he got with some of his other colleagues and looked at their practices. And in fact, they weren't doing any better than he was. And he got discouraged, like, man, we are terrible. If we're the profession that's supposed to be helping marriages, we're terrible. And I don't know. And then he had a brilliant stroke, which was the course of the rest of his life. Instead of looking at seeing what's wrong, let me study couples that have figured it out. What do they do? And that became what's called the marriage clinic. And it's this whole long stuff. He's written a bunch of books. She's co-authored. It's a ton of stuff, but it's scientifically based marriage therapy. And that's why I want to give you some confidence. That it's not just, we've been married for 24 years and talked to a few people, so let me throw some stuff at you. These things work. But they don't work if you don't put them into practice. So I want to dial you in on being active in the things that we're going to share. He calls them, those different people, relationship masters and relationship disasters. So we're not going to go too much, but there are practices and principles based in real study that thousands of couples over hundreds of thousands of hours of research have gone into some of the things we're talking about. The top two predictors of success, and this is, if you get nothing else out of this class, and you go back and listen to the recording and it doesn't make any sense at all, you are totally forgiven. But please dial in on these two things. If you get nothing else, do these two things. The first, regardless of your age, your race, your socioeconomic makeup, your culture, your background, your history, the number one predictor of marital success or not is overall positive affect. That means your body language at home. Do you smile? Do you look happy? When your spouse walks in the room, do you react at all? Do you react positively or negatively? Your positive affect. This isn't what comes out of your mouth. It's, do you look like you like being with this person? That seems intuitive, but you would be amazed if you looked at yourself in the mirror what your body language says. And what it says when your spouse says, hi. Overall positive affect. This sets a context in your home, with your children, when people come over. All of us have been disciples long enough that we know how to turn it on. Hey, welcome time, Kathy. We're just wrapping up our quiet time. Come on in. That's awesome. But when Bible talk leaves and friends leave, that is the work. Is your overall positive affect. Secondly, your ability to reduce negative affect. This is also on you. If Deb's upset, how much do I engage and actually help soothe her? Those are the number 1 and 2 indicators of marital success. And there's a lot of little things, but if you do nothing else, but you're happy to be together and you show it by your expression, and you soothe and encourage and connect to your spouse when they're upset, you're 50% of the way. And you can all do that. You don't need a degree to do that. But you can all do that, showing positive affect.
Yeah, I really appreciate Wade's charge for us to consider our affects. Like for me, it's really easy for me to walk around the house with a scowl on my face. Like I'm more of a negative person, and even more of a more of a thoughtful, like a deeper thinker. And Wade is just always happy all the time, and it's awesome, and he's always smiling, and so it's easy for him. But for me, it's a real challenge. Like I have to think about, what does my face communicate right now? Am I saying that I'm interested in hearing what you say? And really, the way you say things matters just as much as what you are saying, even the words. And in some ways, it's even more important than what you are saying. So caring partners converse in a caring way. So how would you describe your conversation? Is it caring? And some things with body language, different types of body language. Kelly talked about this a little bit, but maybe it's just shaking your head, like your husband, or lifting an eyebrow, kind of like that. Oh, really? We're going to do that? Yeah. Frowning, the scowling, lips puckered. Maybe it is smiling. Maybe you talk with your arms crossed. Maybe you like pop one leg a little bit, give it a little pop. Body proximity, how close you are to one another. Maybe it's hand or finger gestures. Let's hope it's none of those. That expresses something. That definitely expresses something. Yes. So body language, yes. And even your silence. Sometimes we feel like, well, my silence is communicating something. But just because you're silent, that doesn't help your wife sometimes. That's not saying I agree with you. Being silent is not the same as communicating with one another.
Effective communication is where we're heading. And Deb and I deliberately say effective because there can be bad communication. Communication isn't necessarily good just because things are coming out of your mouth. Or information is coming out of your mouth. But effective communication. And I want to say this, the point that for each of us, we do have different temperaments. At different ages, we communicate differently. You have different cultural background, different cultural expressions. What works for you? Then do it. I'm not going to put up this thing. If you do this, every one of us will work. But what works for you? I'm a morning person. So I have learned with Deb, when I get up at 6:30, if I have the best body language and engaging, and I'm really listening, and I'm coming from a place of humility, and I really want to hear her, and I'm attentive to her words, and I'm affirming her, it's 6:30 in the morning. Doesn't work. And I've learned that my body, I just kind of get going early, and she takes longer to go. That's not good or bad. So it's silly to say, honey, I want to have great communication right now. Let's talk. Can you hear the music? Let's talk. I'll bring you coffee. And what works for you? When works for you? So as a couple, what's your groove? Maybe you're night people. That's great. Then what works for you? What are your cultural expectations? I think some of us come from different, I know, we come from different cultures. And there's different cultural expectations of what the man should do and what the woman should do. And so with your unique mix, what is, not just communication, effective communication? This is some of the work that Tom talked about in needing us to do it. We all began here. And I love this quote. I wish you knew how much I like you and how much I love talking to you and how much I wish you were mine. Do you remember those dates? Do you remember sitting in the car? I remember the moment I first liked Debbie. And she had just become a Christian, so I took her out for her 1 month Christian anniversary. And we went with George and Julie Sowers downtown. We had dinner, we went to see a play. We're driving back, and we're coming over 36 back into Boulder, where we were both students. I remember sitting in the back seat, looking at her. I was like this, being super cool. And I thought, I remember the moment when I thought, gosh, I really like her. And it just continued. And I remember a number of months later thinking, man, I wish you were mine. I couldn't say that. You don't say to a discipler that. But then I got her. And so did you. Now the trick is liking what you already have. Once you got it, Liking what you already have. How do you want and continue? This is the hard work. But we started there. We've been there. We still are there, masked with maybe a few wrinkles and not as much hair. This. It's who we are. What has stood in the wake of this, or in the way of this? Communication disasters. This is actually a real. You believe not? Actually, one person died in this accident. Wow. The lady underneath the train was selling newspapers and was stepping in for her husband. It's the only fatality. No one else even got hurt. So it's this. I don't know why I brought that up. I was looking at but anyway, that's nothing to do with your marriage. I'm just saying. We don't want. There are fatalities. Try to make some sort of spiritual connection to it. That's right. There are people under your train. Hold on.
Do not fill in for.
Do not fill in for your spouse if they want you to sell papers. Relationship harms.
So I want to talk to the sisters here first about respecting our spouses. And our husbands need that, right? Yeah. Women, we have to respect our husbands. So some things that I really want to guard our hearts against are really using conversation as a form of punishment. We should never name call, no name calling, no swearing, no sarcasm.
And by the way, it works for the guys too. It's not okay for the guys to.
Respecting your spouse goes both ways, definitely. But sometimes we can be sarcastic. You know, that tearing of the flesh. We can say things that are a little bit edgy. Wives can do that. And we really have to catch ourselves and guard our hearts. Proverbs 8, verse 13, it says, "To fear the Lord is to hate evil. I hate pride and arrogance, evil behavior, and perverse speech." And sometimes when we use that sarcasm or swearing or name calling, that's really perverse speech with our spouse. And another thing, we can never use conversation to force our spouse to agree with us. And how many times, wives, do we want to do that? We just want to keep talking and talking and talking until they change their mind. We just keep going until they see it our way. And we really have to be careful to respect our spouse's feelings and opinions, even if they are very different from our own. And Wade and I, we definitely see things differently at times. You know, there's a lot of times that we're very much right in tune with each other. There's times when we are different. And we've got to allow one another. We've got to leave room for a difference of opinion. Psalm 10, verse 7 says, "His mouth is full of lies and threats. Trouble and evil are under his tongue." So I want to ask you guys, what's under your tongue today? Are trouble and evil under your tongue? And then just never using conversation to kind of rub our spouse's nose in it. You know, that past mistake or the things that you wish they would have done. Even on present mistakes, we never want to punish our partner with our conversation.
Right. How we communicate to each other. Okay, I want you right now to think about the last argument that you had. Not the worst one you've ever had. And that's just good. Think about the last argument the two of you had. Put yourself, and this isn't who's right or who's wrong. It may be resolved, maybe it's unresolved. What was the last substantive argument? And I don't mean like, I mean, you had a substantive. It's important, and there is a right way to engage that conversation, and then there are two wrong ways. Complaint is the right way. We'll talk about this specifically. Criticism and contempt are wrong ways. But for a lot of us, we're not clear of which it is. Complaint is a specific statement limited to one situation. It states how you feel. I am upset because you didn't take out the garbage tonight. I always include this in my counseling when I've done. I say in a conflict resolution, one of the most important things to use is the F word. And people go, oh, feel. What were you thinking? Because pure of heart. I feel, which just means this is my perspective on this specific action. That is legit, and it's the only helpful way that you move forward in conversation. Thinking back to your last argument, was yours a complaint? Or was it, and I'll get to this in a second, a complaint specific, was it a complaint or was it a criticism? A criticism, I love that little facial expression, tends to be a global statement and includes blaming your partner. You'll often find the words always or never in a criticism. Why do you keep putting your friends ahead of me? We were supposed to have dinner tonight. Why do you, that's an accusation. I feel put behind. I feel disregarded because you made a plan that we hadn't talked about. That's a complaint. Why do you keep your friends ahead of me? Is a criticism. This is a better way, a complaint. You were supposed to check with me before inviting anyone over for dinner. I want to spend time with you. That's even borderline criticism complaint. And we're going to go through a little quiz in a second. How do you want to say anything? Contempt is the third and the most hurtful. It's a global statement also, but it adds to the criticism of frustration bordering on a disgust with who the person is. So you make a character assessment. Not about the specific situation. It's a veiled character assassination, which immediately erodes the recipient's confidence through use of open-ended questions that have no valid answer. Contempt also blocks avenues of conversation. As an example, again, complaint. And I probably would do this differently. I'm upset because we did not have dinner tonight. We had plans. A contempt. You always put your friends ahead of me, don't you? Clearly I come last to you. You knew we were supposed to have dinner tonight. I can never depend on you. Which typifies your conversation. Now you may have been dead right. And this is where a lot of us think, but I'm right. We didn't talk about it. But instead of just saying, I feel hurt or disappointed or disregarded, we say, always or never. And we all know there's no such thing as always or never, right? Right. So that would be one indicator that I'm in one of the other two areas if it's always or never. And you have an open-ended question. You always put your friends ahead of me, don't you? You're not really asking a question. You know the difference? Yeah. Do you always put your friends ahead of me? It seems like that's different than you always put your friends ahead of me. You always do this. You never do that. You knew better. You know that would make me mad. You did it on purpose. These shut down communication. And where a lot of us run aground in our conversation. And again, facial expressions matter a lot. I didn't put the stat up here. One of the most interesting things, Susan probably knows this too, 90% of your communication is your body language and the tone of what you say. 53% of what you say is just your body language. So the person is reading. 37% is how it comes across. So if I say, I'll use Deb as an example, I love you. You actually were reading about 90% of what I did, where I'm standing in proximity, how it came across. If I said, I love you, do you feel like, oh, that's really sweet? Same exact words.
Yeah.
But I want to listen to you. I really care. Oh, that's great. We had an argument and she won't listen to me. I know what the problem is.
Right.
It's how you couch it. Let's do a little quiz here. Number one, I'm upset that you didn't pay the gas bill. Is that a complaint? That's correct. It's a complaint. Number two, how can I ever trust you? Complaint, criticism. What do you say? Criticism. It's criticism. It can be close to be contempt, but you don't make a necessary character assessment in this statement. All right, but you're not like, oh, good, okay, as long as I'm criticizing, it's fine. Doing this, so yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I saw that.
I did. Better, but I want you to be able to define and understand. All right. Number three, you're totally irresponsible. It's contempt, right? Let's look at these. So we could go through the rest. We won't for time's sake, but envision and think in your head. I have these. So there's more, we won't, for time's sake. And let me hit a couple of these. Remove blame from your comments. That's where criticism and contempt grow in. Complaint is a positive, again, it's how I feel, specific to it. But remove the blame. I knew what you were thinking. You tried to hurt me. You know better. Take away the blame. Say how you feel. This is my perspective. for most, and it's a typical mistake in communication, we'll box someone in a corner. So I may say to Rich, Rich, you don't like me. Why? Well, when you came in, you hugged everyone else but me.
That's true.
No. Rich is now in a corner. Well, I do, but if I said, it feels like you don't like me, it seems to me, and maybe I didn't assess it right, but did you hug everyone else but me? Now we're having conversation. So open-ended questions, I feel. Don't criticize your partner's personality, again, not character. Don't insult Mark or use sarcasm. That's what Deb said so well. I used to think sarcasm was super funny because I think I'm super funny. So Deb will really like it. No. It's funny 1 time out of 10 and only with the brothers. Like, it's just, don't try it. All right? Don't do it. So it doesn't work. You probably are really funny. Doesn't work in relationships. Be direct. This is legitimately how I feel. Honesty is the underpinning of any ability to trust. So be direct. Be kind, but be direct. What are you actually thinking? What are you actually feeling? And sometimes what we're actually thinking and feeling are unspiritual. They're not right. We know them to be wrong, and that doesn't excuse you doing them. But in conversations, it's important to be clear. This is what I really am mad, and I don't feel like talking. I know I need to, and I don't feel like calling anyone because I know it's. But be honest. What are you really thinking? Stick with one situation. Fight about what you're fighting about. All right, this is. You chew funny. Your mom doesn't cook well. If you didn't drive so bad, we would have gotten here on time. Fight about what you're fighting about. And then put a period on it, and you can move to the next thing, but don't move all over it. Don't try to analyze your partner's personality. I know what you're thinking. Or, you know, that oftentimes this didn't come out of our mouth. The insidious part of this is that we think it in our head. I know what she's going to feel. I know exactly what he's thinking. So I'm just go ahead. Have you ever had that fight in your head?
One-sided.
Fights always win a fight. Who always wins that fight? You do. Here's what I told Deb. I know she heard it. I know she's ignoring it. She's probably thinking about it right now. She probably told everybody, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do it in. I'm going to buy it in because I'm totally justified. That's right. I'm the man of this house. Not words coming out of my mouth. But I've already criticized and justified myself. So don't analyze with your partner. No matter how long you've been married, you can't read minds. You really do get to know somebody, and that's a different thing. But don't mind reading. Communication masters. Yay, these are good people. Here we go. So don't do those things. Do these things. We do want to have, we hope, 8 tools to recalibrate your marriage conversation. So things that maybe aren't present, correct them. Here are things that we want to add as help. 1, become a student again of your spouse. What do you know of your spouse? You remember when you were dating? I mean, here's what I know of Deb. And I actually probably know a lot more than I think, but bring it to bear. I know she's left-handed, and her favorite color is red and black. She is it red? It's red.
Red.
I think it's black one time. Red and black. Oh, maybe it's just because she's red and black. So, see, she doesn't even know. That's what I'm saying. That's the beauty. So, red and some other accepting colors. I know Italian's her favorite food. I know her favorite subject is our kids. I know that she got a worry spirit from her mom. I know she likes the covers, sort of heavy. She likes sleeping cool. There's probably a number of things. But at some point you have a list, you go, I must know everything. No, continue to learn. Continue to examine who it is. What do you know? What makes her happy? What makes him laugh? What does she like? What does he not like? And apply that knowledge. Use your power for good.
Yeah, we want to encourage you to never stop dating. So maybe this is one of those recalibrate moments. You need to start dating again. You know, when you were dating, your best dates, they're centered around showing affection and having conversation with one another. So maybe you had some great dates, skydiving or going to the 3-hour movie. You know, those were good. But your best dates are always in conversation with one another, showing genuine affection for one another. And that's the goal, is to get to know each other more thoroughly and to let them know you and how much you care about that person. So never stop dating over the years.
We got some great input when we were young married, so we should have 2 regular meetings, and at the time it was every week, and we've fallen off a little bit, but 2 regular meetings. One is a discipling time. We get together and say, how are we doing? How are our finances? What's our schedule like? Who's shopping? Who's not? You know, just the business of us. How are we doing? That bump we had a couple days ago, is it all right? Read a book together. And so during that time, once a week, we get together and what did the chapter say to you? What did the chapter say to me? But every time, if I've done any pre-marriage counseling for you, you've heard this. Right, JJ and Trenton? Have a business time. Secondly, and not the same thing, have a date. So they're not the same time. So just because you're at a nice restaurant, talking about your finances, have a date. And employ this no matter what the years are. When Deb and I were young married, we hired, some of you know Christine Colazzo, now Christine Lewis. We had her on retainer. So it was a standing appointment. Every Monday, she came over and we had dinner prepared and we went on our date. And at that time, she didn't have a car, so I went to pick her up, brought her back, we went on our date, and then we had to move it for what reasons I couldn't remember till Wednesday. Then we helped her buy a car, which was great. Then she would come over, but I'll tell you, with that program, we had 8 out of 10 weeks a date. And it was only canceled if she was sick, or one of us was sick, or the kids were sick. And there'd be the occasion it was a ministry thing we just couldn't get out of, couldn't on a date, but it was a cancellation. Otherwise, it was a standing appointment. Do the same. Rent a local teenager.
Pay them.
And we paid Christina.
Pay them.
So we paid her once a month. We paid her like $25, $30 a week. Paid her once a month. We paid for her singles retreats at the time. Campus retreat. We threw a little money. We helped her buy her car a little bit. We didn't buy a car for her, but we contributed. But there was that relationship, and still to this day, Christina is like, like almost like a daughter for us. So don't go, oh, let's have a date this week. What are you doing tomorrow? Your schedule is going to fill up. You have to set a standard time, particularly if you have younger kids. Get a local, rent someone. If your kids of age, praise God, or you can leave for a while, leave them. At least once a week. And you can have a date on Saturday morning. You can have a date Saturday afternoon. You can maybe plan after service, our lunchtime. Work it in. You can do it.
Yes.
Before you got married, you found a way.
Right.
I don't know how I ended up on the same side of campus Deb was there. Oh, hey. So weird that I'm halfway out of my way, but hey, you can find a way if you want to do it. Never stop dating. 2, nurture fondness, admiration, and respect. You guys don't know the love model? Love bank model? Basically, deposits go in, we all have an emotional bank account. And so if you make deposits in, you can write the occasional bad check. Or not a bad check, you can write a check if you have the balance to cover it. It takes 5 positive affirmations, 5 to 7, to equal every 1 negative. So what are those 5 affirmations? Good morning, I love you. It's so great to be married to you again. You look great. You're beautiful. Thank you for doing that. Have I told you how smart you are? That was the right idea. I'm so glad that we did it your way. You know what, honey? You were right. I was wrong. Man, that's like 2 or 3. That's right. That's all 7. You're done for the day. That's right. That's right. But the affirmations, the love bank model, nurture fondness, nurture admiration, nurture respect, and these take active elements.
Okay, so Wade and I are a little different because Wade is super chatty and I'm not as chatty. But there's some things that we need to know kind of about the sexes. And a lot of times, a lot of men don't have as strong of a need for conversation as wives do. That's kind of a general guideline. If you don't fit that like us, then you know that's fine. But that's kind of a general characteristics that wives really need conversation. We enjoy it. We want conversation just for conversation's sake. That's all. We just want to hear what's going on. And conversation that satisfies a woman focuses on the events of her day. That back and forth conversation of how did you feel? Who did you talk to? What happened in your day? You know, we need to make sure that we're always asking one another, how did you feel about the events of your day? And a question for you to think about and recalibrate again is women want verbal attention. Am I showing verbal attention to my spouse? So something to think about there. You want to do the next one? Oh, okay. Yeah, and really, women want to feel like they are with someone who cares about their perception, cares deeply for them. So women, and Kelly talked about this earlier today. She talked about women bond through conversation. They really connect with whoever they're talking to through conversation. That's why it's so important to be talking on a regular basis with your spouse. And sometimes our jobs take us out of town, right? And that can be really hard to bond over the phone or bond over text. I know people do your best, but even when you get home, you've got to have a time of reconnecting with one another. You have to have a special sit-down, face-to-face conversation, and timing really matters. Like Wade had talked about, first thing in the morning for me is not the best time for me to just have a great conversation. The fourth quarter of a football game is not the best time for Wade to have it, have a conversation. You know, timing really does matter. So think about it. I know a lot of husbands, even wives, come home from work and you've just battled traffic about 45 minutes to get home, and you know the kids are crying, and you're like you need a few minutes to unwind before you jump straight into. So tell me everything. How was your day? And what did you do? And who did you talk to? And what did he say? And so we need to know the timing of your family. What works for you?
Awesome. Recognize and accept your spouse's bid for connection. Let me read this. A repair attempt is a statement or an action aimed at cooling down a heated argument. It's an effort to put the brakes on a negative situation before it spins out of control. Repair attempts are a happy couple's secret weapon. If you're using them successfully, your marriage is probably thriving. Repair attempts can be subtle or blunt, funny or serious, like I'm sorry. Or sometimes humor is difficult, but if you can insert something that right now you look like my dead grandmother, and I don't, and maybe that's not helpful. Maybe that's a contempt, all right? But there is a bid. Okay, you're right. What your spouse is saying is, I don't want to fight, and I'm trying to take this in another direction. There was a couple that we've been working with over the years, and they had an argument. And she said, I'm sorry, but he said, it seemed insincere, so I just rejected it. I want to wait for a sincere apology. And it likely wasn't that sincere, but that was a bid. She was trying to say, can we take this another direction? And if you slap that down enough times, she's going to quit trying to make a bid and have to get into a place where I'm going to fight then. And so recognize what's a bid for your attention, for it to ease, for it to go in another direction. Particularly men, we aren't as good at recognizing and acknowledging. I'm sorry, Greg Moreski, he's awesome, but Greg Jackson always said, humility is always the right answer. And you're like, I'm sorry. Or I didn't hear that. I didn't intend that. I understand what you're saying. I was talking to a brother once that he just had that kind of body language going, and I said, bro, I really want to hear you, but you're shooting your words at me like a bullet, and it's coming out of a gun, and I can't grab it. As a matter of fact, they're hurting me. Can you slow them down, and then I can grab them? And he was like, oh, okay. It's not insulting, and it wasn't shutting him down, but it was a bid to go, this is not feeling safe, this doesn't feel right. So have something that can change the conversation. Accept and recognize those bids.
Yeah. So that bid for connection and bonding, it just takes time. a whole lot of time in your week. So my encouragement to you is to really spend between 14 and 15 hours a week, yes, per week, not per month, per week, with undivided attention, speaking and in conversation with your spouse.
Now, let me stop it. How many of you think, heck no?
That's like 2 hours a day if you like break it down. Okay.
It's like a lot.
Okay.
It takes that amount. That's not too much. I'm not saying, hey, that's too much, minimum down. This is what it takes.
Yeah.
This is what it takes to really engage and hear and respond and learn and work through, particularly if you're stuck on something. And
Right.
it's not enough to go, our sex life doesn't satisfy me. Okay, call someone. How are we going to talk and engage? So it takes time.
So maybe you go, okay, I know I don't have 2 hours of my day to spend it, but there are ways to go around that 14 to 15 hour benchmark of conversation. And that really is having a date. If every day or every week you have a date for 4.5, maybe 5 hours, that's a chunk right there that takes that, brings that 14, 15 hour marker back down to a little more reasonable time. And really, it's going to take you guys, it means spending less time watching TV, less time Facebooking, less time on social media, and less time in the man cave. And I really do have a challenge for you with social media. Think about how much time you spend in the day catching up on social media, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, with your friends, and spend that exact amount of time catching up with your spouse. I guarantee you would be an hour, 2 hours right there in conversation with your spouse if you took that social media challenge of, I'm going to catch up with my spouse first and then all my friends afterwards.
Next one's yours.
Can you help me? Can you change it? Okay, so going on a date, that 15 hours, it's got to be something that you guys really enjoy together. And it's something that you guys need to focus on together. It can't be just like we're going out and we're both doing something simultaneously, but we're not really communicating with one another. So some good activities for a date, things that encourage conversation are a long walk, long drive, going to a restaurant. Boating is a fun thing, golfing, sunbathing, and it's interesting because you talk about these fun things that you start doing, and really the more time you spend together and the more activities you do together, the more conversation starts to come naturally. And you may go, oh gosh, I don't even know what to say to my spouse for 15 hours every week. The more you're doing things together, really, the more topics that you'll have. It's a lot easier to talk about things. And that's not that you can't have your own separate interests, but really trying to grow in recreational companionship, things that you do together, things that you enjoy together really builds conversation. And then another thing that we want to do is we want to balance conversation, right? So this can kind of be Wade and I sometimes, that one of us kind of speaks a lot. Was that a complaint? I think that was a criticism? Well, one of us does like to talk. I'll let you figure out who that is. One of us likes to talk a lot, and one of us is a little more quiet. And that can actually shut down your partner. That can make your spouse, they just feel more comfortable not saying anything, and they're more silent. So wives, if you want your husband to talk to you, you've got to give him the floor. You've got to give him the time, and don't jump back into the conversation. You really need to if it takes a few minutes for him to get his thoughts together, or maybe you need to ask some questions like priming the pump of how did you feel? What did you think about that? So give him the time to think about it and start that conversation going, even if it's a slow start. Don't jump back in and don't cover up for your spouse. It needs to be balanced. 5 minutes, 5 minutes. Is this me? Okay. Okay, yeah, we talked about that, monopolizing the conversation and taking time to get started, even if it takes a little bit of time. Some conversation starters. Again, what has made you feel good today? Instead of just going through what happened today, but what made you feel good? What made you feel bad? Like what was Don't just say the facts, but really express how you felt about something. What was the most important part of your day? That's a good way to start. What was the most stressful part of your day? Really digging to the heart and not just dealing with the surface things of the kids made me crazy, I burned the soup. If you're me, you probably do. You know, and just the basics, but you really want to get to a deeper conversation with your spouse.
We're going to steal an exercise right now, so I need you to turn to your spouse. If you can actually get knee to knee and face to face, that is the most helpful. If any of you have taken marriage dynamics, yes, it's that exercise. That's what we're going to do. Are you gonna face to face? That's good. Okay, you ready? Okay, we're gonna start with the wife. The wife, I want you to look in your husband's hands, and if you can, grab.
No, his eyes.
Oh, his eyes. Look into his hands. Hold it. Look into his eyes.
We're going to have a long night.
And I'm going to, for the next 60 seconds, tell this person why you respect and love them, characters about them that you've been part of.
And don't interrupt.
Huh? If they're asleep, wake them up and then tell them we're doing this exercise.
But spouses don't interrupt. Let them
Spouses do not respond. You're only listening. You're only receiving, okay? So if females talking, males, you're not talking, you're listening, you're receiving. This is something that you can do. It feels like a long time, maybe for some, but what a great pattern. Before you go to bed, this is great pillow talk. There is great in the car, but it's really important that you're not just throwing things. I think get into the habit, if you can, on some regular basis of touching knee to knee and looking each other in the eye and being intentional and sharing. Amen? Do this on your dates. Let your partner influence you. Response communicates respect. You want to write that down. Greg Jackson changed our lives with those 3 words. Deb and I had been married for 10 years. And we were stuck. Our 10th year was pretty much one long, slow fight the whole year. And it was my fault. And I was frustrated, Deb was frustrated. She kept saying, you don't respect me. And I kept saying, what do you mean I don't respect you? I don't hit you, I brag, I don't steal, I don't get cheated at you. What do you mean? You don't respect me. Use different words. I can't really respect. That was our 10 year. And Greg, after we got together with the Jacksons, and it was one of those times where I'm like this, Deb is crying, I'm like, go. You fix her, because I've tried. And I was frustrated, and Greg said, as we talked through a few things, response communicates respect. There were a lot of little things that Deb would ask me to do, like when you take your hangers out of the way I used to get dressed, so I'd take my hangers out of the closet, I put all the clothes in the bed, see what they look like together, then I would get dressed, I'd leave the hangers. When we were
on my side of the bed.
On Deb's side of the bed. When we were young marrieds, the first 4 or 5 months of this, she was this dutiful wife, put back his hangers, but then after about 6 months of that, it got old. So she said very sweetly, honey, can you put your hangers back in the closet when you're done? No problem. So I did it for about 2 weeks, and then they started showing up on the bed again. She said again, hey, can you take care of your hangers? Oh, I forgot. No, you're back. They showed back up again. So then she went for a year of, I'll just do it. But those hangers got heavier and heavier and heavier. And then when she finally came back and said, look, would you fix your hangers? Would you put the hangers back? I'm like, whoa, where's the attitude coming from? I'm like, they're just hangers. What's your deal? Maybe you got the problem. And went back and forth, and there were a lot of little things like that, and that's what Greg said. Response communicates respect. How can she have any confidence that you're not going to cheat on her or hurt her if you won't put dumb hangers back? If she's asking to do it, do it. Take the trash out, do it. Say, I'm sorry, do it. Response communicates respect. That's what she was saying, didn't have the words, and she was absolutely right. And it took 10 years for me to realize it. So I'm telling you, men, unless it violates your conscience, unless it's illegal, Unless it's going to hurt one or both of you, do it her way. Unless it violates your conscience. And don't start going, well, it's my conscience. Violates your conscience. It's illegal, or it's going to hurt somebody that you're aware of. Do it her way. It will work out best, and you set an atmosphere of deference where we're really listening and deferring to each other. And the fear that gentlemen have is, well, she's going to run with it. You have a faulty and probably poor assessment of your wife's character.
Come on.
Response communicates respect. Overcome gridlock. Let me just go, I'll do these really fast. This is an interesting, solve your solvable problems. Gottman's discovered that couples that express high satisfaction in their relationships have up to 70% difference in their opinion. There's Democrats married to Republicans. She doesn't like to go out to eat, he does. She likes concerts, he doesn't. Up to 70%. But what they did was they accept and they support.
Come on.
Instead of trying to change her, that's the way she likes it. That's the way he does it. It's okay. And just that difference, just that letting it go. You can have up to 70% difference of opinion and be very happily connected about intimacy. So, solve your solvable problems. What are things we can work on and support and accept? And then overcoming gridlock. This is where some of us maybe are. Doing the previous, looking at whether you speak in contempt or criticism, sitting down, spending time will help you overcome gridlock, because you have to be committed to it. Like Tom Brown said in his class, the men, some of us, it's not going to get fixed this weekend, probably. It might get fixed next month. But a persistence of doing the right things will get you across gridlock. Create shared meaning. Nurture existential meaning and dreams. I love that word. Basically, come together, what is the meaning of life? It's existential. What's important to us? Where are we going as people? What does our marriage mean? Who are we as a couple? These are cool, deep things to discuss. Create shared meaning.
Go through the next one.
You sure?
Okay, so some questions for him today. Do I spend time talking to my wife on a deep level, expressing my feelings, and expressing my feelings? How close are you to the 15-hour goal of conversation each week? And what should we do to make some changes? Can you guys see all those? Then how are you doing on your date? Do I have a weekly date with my wife? Do I share interests with my wife, that recreational companionship, that playing together? And does my career take me away from my wife? And if so, what can I do? Questions for her. Okay. Do I miss anything from our dating days? Do we still have the kind of communication that we shared then? Am I doing anything that hinders conversation? Do I have a job that requires too much travel? Do I talk too much? What can I do to improve the situation? What interests do I share with my spouse, with my husband? You know, are there other areas that we could share in? Kelly talked about maybe taking a cooking class. What activities could we try to stimulate conversation? Okay, next one. And all of these slides will all be on the website, so you don't have to write super fast or anything. Okay, and together, do our spheres of interest overlap, or are they totally separate? Do we have some things in common, some common ground there? What areas of mutual interest do we have? Do we communicate about those things? Are we growing in our communication? Are you recalibrating that? Do we have meaningful conversation, not just about the kids or schedules or duties, but really feelings and concerns? And how can we rearrange our schedules to work toward that goal of 15 hours a week?
So recalibrating your marriage conversation. You know, it was said that in the scriptures, Jesus was made perfect through what he suffered. And perfect doesn't, of course, mean sinless, because he already was. It means complete, that he understood. He could have full empathy. and could relate and be in other people's shoes, and suffering is what created that. If you feel right now stuck in your marriage, or discouraged, or wondering, did I marry the right person, or any of those things that you feel a discouragement, understand that it's through these difficulties that you're being made complete. There are only 2 relationships that have experienced perfection, that experienced a world without sin. A relationship with God and marriage.
Is it in the garden?
In the garden. It was Adam's relationship with God and marriage. Every other relationship, child, employee, friend, D group, siblings, all came after sin entered the world. The only 2 that experienced no sin were our relationship with God and marriage. And I think, in my mind, God has a high view of all of those relationships, but particularly this one.
Yes. True.
And not just globally, but your marriage. And however it came, well, we met in the world, we met in a bar, your marriage has incredible upside. It's got a friendship that is unique and powerful. It has elements of understanding and support and power that change people's lives, that change your own. That's your marriage. And if you're in a rocky spot right now, you just need to recalibrate. You don't need to quit. You don't need to throw your hands up, but you can engage, and there's some real tools. If marriage counseling is something you need to do, I would really encourage you to do it. In the church, out of the church, there has sometimes been a stigma of counseling. Please, don't let that hold you back. Get the help you need. Get with a couple. I'm so glad we sat down with Greg and Teresa. I'm great and had an ongoing relationship. If you're not in a discipling relationship or a one-to-one, I don't know where all of us are spiritually or part of the church, but part of the church, we really believe in those intentional one-on-one relationships. Do you have one that the 2 of you are engaging in a safe one that will regularly get together and talk? How we really do need. Man, pull this stuff up. It's not fatal. It's actually the path to making you complete.
That's right. That's right.
So thank you in advance for the things that you'll take. If you put even one of these into practice, you will be a blessing to yourself, to the church, and the world at large. Thank you for your attention, and we are dismissed.